So this is our next press conference, and this is Miss Emily Neves, and she'll be ready to answer any questions. Who would like to be first this time? You want to be first again, Mr. Allen? Go ahead. Here you go, sweetheart.
Hi, my name's Alan.
Hi, Alan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I know that you do script writing. So I was wondering, have you written for any anime, or are you writing more so live action type stuff?
Actually, I write, my day job, quote unquote, is I'm a senior writer for Crunchyroll. So yes, I've written a lot of anime, hundreds. Let's see, one of my more famous shows that I've written is Pop Team Epic. That's probably my favorite show I've ever written. I like to say it's the show that most aligns with my core values. So that, Popcraft, let's see what else. I've written a couple episodes of My Hero Academia. I stepped in for episodes 107 and 108, so that's the Shigaraki arc, the Shigaraki backstory, and then also the backstory of Aizawa and Present Mike. And their friend from school, and the unfortunate story of what became of him. So that's probably some of my proudest work. I love My Hero, I'm kind of obsessed with it, and that arc in particular is just so juicy and so dark. So yeah, and yeah, I've written hundreds of anime, and I'm actually, I'm an author as well. I'm working on a memoir right now. I'm about 38,000 words in, so a little over halfway, maybe just about halfway, but yeah.
You want to go next, Mr. Q?
How has watching anime impacted your life?
Oh, gosh, so much. I got into voice acting because I had watched anime as a teenager. Akira, Vampire Hunter D, all of the big ones. And then in college, I saw the Ghibli movies, and they just changed my life. And then I actually got to voice a Ghibli movie called Grave of the Fireflies. Yeah, it's so upsetting, so very sad, but that's actually one of the youngest characters I've ever played, Setsuko. She's like 2, I think, when the movie starts. So yeah, I mean, and then for the last 15 years, it's been a huge part of my life, so I love it. It's changed my life for the better.
So, considering the fact that you've both been a writer and a voice actor, and you're able to really kind of see the industry on multiple different fronts,
yes.
How has that impacted, or how has that influenced your work? When you're writing and you're listening, you're kind of imagining the characters in your head, or you're looking at character arcs and everything else,
Yeah.
or how has voice acting been like, you know what, as I'm writing something, I can see how it's visualizing differently?
Yeah, well, I know that being a writer has made me a better voice actor. And also I've directed several shows as well. Maid-sama, Watamote, Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. So all of those positions sort of inform each other. Because I've been a voice actor and a director, I think it makes me a better writer because I act the lines as I'm writing them. I don't just kind of say them, so it helps them fit better. And just, you know, I come from theater too, so that gives me a really good sense of character voice. And I can, you know, take the translation and kind of see through the way it's translated and also through the animation how I think that the character would speak, you know, what vernacular they would use, what slang they would use, would they be very formal, would they be very informal, how fast do they talk, how slow do they talk. So yeah, all of those jobs sort of talk to each other, and they're all very similar, but I have to say, of all 3 of them, I think that writing is my favorite. I love voice acting, but writing, you get sort of, you can kind of shape the adaptation of the entire show. So it's a very important job, and it's a very difficult job, but I think it's also the most rewarding job. Just seeing, you know, when it's all said and done, like your words preserved, basically. So, and also it's like doing puzzles, you know, that's when people ask me what I do, I'm like, well, I do dialogue puzzles for a living. So, because as you know, the shows are animated in Japan, so all of the mouth movements are set. So we get a literal translation and I have to make it sound like people or dragons or, you know, demigods talking, but I also have to make it fit in the mouth movements. So that's often very challenging because the syntax of Japanese is so different than the syntax of English, and so there are some things in Japanese that take 3 syllables to say and they take 12 to say in English, or vice versa. So it's really fun. It's hard, but I've been doing it for a long time, so I kind of have gotten to the place where it's fun. I really enjoy it.
So as a guaranteed triple threat in the field, as a writer, director, and voice actress, what advice would you give to anyone looking to break into the field? Either one of the fields, but because you have such a very unique perspective, challenges they might overcome, how they can work on their craft, especially since a lot of people actually kind of transfer into voice acting.
Yeah.
They're professors, teachers, engineers, and they're like, oh, I'll give voice acting a try. And then, like, we just spoke with Greg Baldwin earlier, and he was telling us that, he was 46 when he really first started to, like, hit his roles.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right, and he was like, don't ever give up, doing everything
Yeah.
else, but it's still a unique pathway for each and every person.
Definitely. There's no one right way. A lot of us get into it through theater. That's how I got into it. Like I said, I watched those shows when I was younger, and then I was a resident acting company member at a theater in Houston, Texas called the Alley Theater. So I got my degree in acting and all of that, and then I was doing theater like a full-time job, 5-6 shows a year, sometimes rehearsing one during the day, performing in another one at night. But I think that, and so one of my friends who was also in the theater worked at ADV, which is now Sentai, and he said that they were looking for new female talent, and would I like to audition, and so I did, and that's kind of how it all began. But I do think that if you want to be an actor, a voice actor, you have to remember that you are an actor first, and so it helps to train in scene study, text analysis, and also practice things like improv and also cold reading, because when we go into the booth, I'm sort of an exception because I've written some shows that I've started, like Kakario Bed and Breakfast for Spirits. I wrote that and I was the lead. So I knew what was going to happen before I went in, but most of the time you don't. Sometimes the show will air subbed before it airs dubbed, and then that's an advantage because you can watch it before you go in. But my point is, a lot of the time you go in and you see the scene and then you record it, and it's all for the first time. So you need to be able to very quickly watch the scene, read the text, understand what the character's going for, or what they're experiencing, what their motivation is, what's happening to them in the scene, and kind of do all of that in an instant, and then be able to convey that with your voice alone, just in a matter of like 30 seconds. So it takes practice. It's hard. It's a lot like, I don't know, sometimes I like to compare it to playing like Guitar Hero or Rock Band. You have to, there's so many moving parts, and you have to like read the line, watch the script, watch the anime, and just kind of like, throw it all together in an instant. So I think that training as an actor is really important. But if you want to get into writing, same thing, take some writing classes. There are all kinds of workshops online, especially one of the silver linings of COVID is that there are a lot of writing schools that are completely online. And so it's all through Zoom. You can just work on your craft, work on dialogue. I think that writing believable dialogue is probably the most important skill an ADR scriptwriter needs. And I got my minor in college in playwriting and screenwriting, so that was like my main focus. So it lends itself really well to that job. And then same thing as a director, I would say train as an actor, and then they have like directing classes too, sometimes at community colleges and whatnot, colleges. And that, being a director, the most important skill is understanding story, understanding what's happening beat to beat, and understanding like what happened to cause this moment to happen, and because this moment happens, what happens next, and what is the sort of like domino effect of the story, like what events cause what events and why, and what each character is feeling, so that you can guide an actor very quickly from coming into the booth, having no knowledge of the show, and just being able to show up in the moment and perform and give the show what it needs. So.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to ask about directing. So, like, you as a director, like, are you very hands-on with your actors in terms of, like, giving notes and guidance on how to deliver a scene?
Yeah, it depends. I think that the most important job of a director is casting.
Okay.
So I try to first cast actors that I trust and that are professional and that I know can come in and get the job done. But I also like working with new people too. So if I'm working with someone that I've worked with a lot and who has a ton of experience, like Monica Rial or Chris Savitt, I've directed both of them, and they're just amazing. It's like, at that point, I'm like, well, all I have to do is scroll, because you know what you're doing. I just scroll in the script, and you go, and it's perfect, and sometimes we'll have to rewrite on the fly, and Monica's a long-time ADR writer, so she could just throw things out in the moment sometimes if a line doesn't fit. But with newer people, yeah, I am pretty hands-on. I'm very gentle though. I think that the main thing for a director is to create a safe, fun environment. It's like, guys, we're making cartoons here. And so while it is important to do the source material justice and to tell the story, and I do hold that sacred, at the same time, it's fun. It should be fun. So I'm never harsh on actors. I never yell at actors. I'm never mean, because I, as an actor, have experienced those things, both in theater, well, no, just in theater, never in anime, luckily, but I know how it feels. And so I try to be compassionate and put myself in the actor's shoes and be like, okay, if this were me and I were having a hard time with the scene, how would I want somebody to talk to me to help me get it right? So, yeah.
Because of your versatility, what would you say is like your personal favorite challenge or new breakthrough that you've experienced?
Well, I think playing Eri was a bit of a challenge. It had been a long time since I played a character that young who has to go through such trauma. And so I had to play a 6-year-old girl, but not in an anime sort of cartoony way, but a very realistic way, and portray a child that young going through such intense emotion and like crying and all of these things. So it took a lot. It was a big challenge having to like put myself in her shoes and say the line as a real 6-year-old and not make it sound corny or cheesy. And Colleen really helped me a lot with that. But I had cut my teeth on Setsuko, but it had been like 10 years. So yeah, I'm much older than Eri, so putting myself back in those little tiny shoes was challenging, but oh so rewarding. I mean, like every time she comes on, the crying part wasn't hard. Every time she comes on screen, I tear up. Even when she's happy, I'm like, I love her so much. So, yeah, I would say that. And then on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, playing Uryu Minane in The Future Diary, that's probably my favorite role ever. Mostly because of the character arc that she takes. She starts out as a terrorist and then goes through all of this pain and suffering, and she's just this war-torn, traumatized, basically wounded child in an adult's body. And so getting to find her humanity through all of that trauma and suffering was difficult, vocally and emotionally, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what, as actors, we live for, is like playing a character who changes so much. So
Thank you.
Do you have one more question? Do we have time for one more there? Mr. T, do you have one more?
Yes. All right, so you sound like you're a big anime fan.
Uh-huh.
So what's your big 3?
Oh, my big 3 anime? Well, definitely My Hero. I love that show so much. It has so much heart and humor, and it sparks the imagination so much. So let's see. A couple of mine are actually pretty obscure, and I think maybe I might be a little bit biased because I worked on them, but Copcraft, that's one of my favorites of all time. I wrote that, and it's kind of like a buddy cop story set in sort of a futuristic fantasy world, sort of. It's a lot like LA, but it's just like slightly on the fantasy side, but it's hilarious. And I just love cop stories, so that, and then Cop Team Epic. I mean, I'm obsessed with that show. It's so funny and so bizarre, and I can't say the S word, but it's an S post. It's like the whole show is just a big S post. So I love that, and I loved kind of the different actors playing Pipami and Kokoko every episode. That was super cool. But yeah,